To First Unitarian Church of Toledo and our weekly Sunday service, here in person in the sanctuary and on our Toledo Unitarians YouTube channel. Our first announcement is Arun Nataraja on behalf of RE Council.
Okay, I'm very happy to announce that we are working towards resuming full RE for the church now that we have in-person services on a regular basis. And the most important part of that is to find an RE director. Otherwise, it's extremely difficult to organize these things and a permanent one. And one of the issues with that is finances. And we were very gratified that the board made adjustments to their budget to carve out enough to make it possible for us to hire an RE director. This was also helped by a significant contribution from the estate of Don Noyak, and that is what is enabling us to announce that we are going to be starting a search for an RE director. And I hope everybody in the congregation will be excited by this and also be willing to participate in the search. If we'll be asking people, we are going to be calling for applications and interviewing candidates, and then hopefully bringing our chosen candidate to introduce him or her to the whole church. And hopefully full-time RE will begin shortly after that in the church, and we hope to have a vibrant program in the coming services. Right now, we still don't have a regular RE session, but we hope that will begin shortly. Thank you.
Thanks, Arun. Okay, and for those who are here, you are welcome to take home any of the literature that you find in the pews. Among these, we have a visitor card. So if you are visiting us in person, you may fill out the visitor card. If you are a member, there's also information on here where you can circle or comment to us what aspect of church you might like to get more involved with. So thank you for taking a look at that. And welcome visitors also online. You can connect with us by filling out the contact email for our UUFYI email newsletter. And that concludes announcements.
We will begin our service with these opening words. A place of belonging and caring. It is not by chance that you arrived here today. You have been looking for something larger than yourself. Inside of you, there is a yearning, a calling, a hope for more. A desire for a place of belonging and caring. Through your struggles, someone nurtured you into being, instilling a belief in a shared purpose, a common yet precious resource that belongs to all of us when we share. And so you begin seeking a beloved community, a people that does not put fences around love, a community that holds its arms open to possibilities of love, a heart home to nourish your soul and share your gifts. Welcome home. Welcome to worship. And for our chalice lighting, I will read and Sandra will do the lighting. A symbol of learning and love by Elizabeth Harding. Chalice with tea-light candles on altar. We, Unitarian Universalists, don't drink from our chalice. Instead, we use it to hold the flame. The circle of the chalice helps keep the fire small. The flame doesn't blind us. It doesn't burn us. It gives us light so we can see all the different things in the universe, even the invisible ones, because the Unitarian Universalist flame is a light of learning. The flaming chalice is a symbol of learning and of love. It is our symbol, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism.
Please join me in reciting the covenant printed in your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Our hymn this morning is number 1020 in your teal hymnal. This one, Wo Ya Ya.
God knows where we are going, but we know within and we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there. We know we will. We know that the road will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there. We know we will. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
For today's story, Tai Chi, the Story of Its Beginning, by Denise Tracy. There was a young man who grew up in China. Everyone said that he was so calm and peaceful, he should become a monk. Not wanting to displease his family and friends by telling the truth, the young man let them think he was indeed peaceful and calm. Inside, however, the young man was filled with feelings of doubt, joy, love, happiness, sadness, and many questions. Because he wanted others' approval, he kept his feelings and questions to himself. He went on looking calm and peaceful to everyone. When he was old enough, he entered the monastery because everyone said he looked so peaceful and calm. They did not know of his secret inner life. Everyone was pleased because they felt he would be a great monk. For years, he practiced sitting calmly and peacefully, and his masters were pleased. Little did they know that behind that calm exterior bubbled energy, exuberance, and still more questions. The young man kept all these things to himself. After years at the monastery, the young man was to be tested for his deep inner religious peace. He was to go to a mountaintop to meditate daily for many months, and on a final day, the master would observe his meditation. He went to the mountain for many days. He sat and sat and sat. He looked very calm and peaceful on the outside, but on the inside, his mind was filled with the crane's flight, fire, and shadows, and the earth elements, as well as questions of beginnings and endings. He did not tell anyone of the scenes and questions that filled his mind. One day, he was at the top of the mountain, sitting peacefully, pretending to be calm, meditating and preparing for the day of his exam, which was only 2 weeks away, when a fly landed right on the end of his nose. He tried wiggling his nose to get the fly off. This did not work. He wiggled his nose again. What a stubborn fly. Next, he waved his hand, and the fly danced. As he waved his hand, he discovered how joyful it felt to move. The fly then landed on his nose again. The young man waved his other hand. This too felt wonderful. The fly began to turn circles and move with the wind and earth. The young monk leaped and laughed, dancing with the fly. As the days passed, the young man looked forward to his dancing and moving with the fly. He lost all track of time, hours, days, or minutes. He knew only the joy of moving in harmony with the elements, earth, water, fire, wood, wind, and metal. The young man went to the top of the mountain on the day of his exam, but he had forgotten that this was a most important day. He saw the fly, and they began their dance together. Earth, water, fire, wood, wind, metal. They moved with focused energy and great joy. Neither the fly nor the young man noticed the master of masters seated, watching their movements. After a while, the master of masters approached. The young man grew silent, embarrassed, and fearful. He was supposed to be calm and meditative. He looked down in shame. He had failed his training. The master of masters then said, "Young man, you must teach me this movement. You use the energy of the life force to mirror the earth, fire, wind, sky, birds, and water. This focused energy complements our study of inner peace. Since all is in balance, we need stillness and energy. We need peace and activity. We need meditation and movement. Teach me. Then you will teach all the monks this new miracle of focused energy." So from one young man whose creativity spilled over to dance with the fly came a meditation of movement called Tai Chi.
anthem today is by Amanda Udis-Kessler, Rooted and Grounded in Love. In a time of disease, we are called to be healers, embodying love's holy care. We follow the healer who tended the suffering, restoring the wounded, our work and our prayer. We are joyful and strong as our faith is revealed in the richest abundance of fruit that we yield. We are rooted and grounded in love, like a tree in the river. We're planted so deep. We are rooted and grounded in love. With each gift that we bring and each promise we keep, as we birth a new world where we all have enough, we are rooted and grounded in love. We are rooted and grounded in love, like a tree by the planted so deep. We are rooted and grounded in love. With each gift that we bring and each promise we keep, as we birth a new world where we all have enough, we are rooted and grounded in love. We are rooted and grounded
Today's reading is from Theodore Parker's 10 Sermons of Religion, from the Sermon of Justice and the Conscience.
Before we do our reading, why don't we go ahead and have a moment of meditation, contemplation, and prayer? Okay? And we'll come back to our reading. Yeah, breathe that out. Breathe that out. There are a lot of people who are suffering in the world today. It is part of the pandemic. It is part of the being scared of getting sick or trying to get over being sick, the death of people in our families, and just needing some time of reflection. This prayer is called Eternal Mystery by Carolyn Meyer. May we open ourselves ever more fully to that eternal mystery, which lures us onward toward life and creativity. May we find the courage to live our faith, to speak our truth, and to strive together for a world where freedom abounds, and justice truly does roll down like water. May we know the fullness of love without fear, and the serenity of peace without turmoil. May we hold one another in the deep and tender places with compassion. And may we grace one another by sharing our own vulnerabilities, being ever mindful of within that makes us all. Just have one moment of silence. Thank you. And now Sandra will do our reading.
Okay, so today's reading is from the Sermon of Justice and the Conscience by Theodore Barger. God has made man with the instinctive love of justice in him, which gradually gets developed in the world. But in himself, justice is infinite. This justice of God must appear in the world and in the history of men, and after all the wrongs that patient merit of the unworthy takes, still you see that the plowshare of justice is drawn through and through the field of the world, uprooting the savage plants. The proverbs of the nation tell us this: the mills of the gods grind slow, but they grind to powder. Ill got, ill spent. The triumphing of the wicked is but for a moment. What the devil gives, he also takes. Honesty is the best policy. No butter will stick to a bad man's bread. Sometimes these sayings come from the instinct of justice in man and have a little ethical exaggeration about them, but yet more often they represent the world's experience of facts more than its consciousness of ideas. Look at the facts of the world. You see a continual and progressive triumph of the right. I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience, but from what I see, I am sure it bends towards justice.
Hello. Good morning. My name is Melissa Jeter, and I will be your student minister this morning. The sermon that I have for you today is Before the Love Story. Red might be an auspicious color this month. as it connects us through the Chinese New Year, the year of the water tiger. Tigers are symbols of strength, exorcising evils and braveness. Red also connects us to Black History Month, where red represents the bloodshed by African Americans, but also a link to the heritage of many Black peoples who claim African descent. We are most familiar with red also this time of year as a passion for Valentine's Day. I have needed to assert a passion of my own and braveness as I discern the use of my gifts in telling a real love story of humanity or interdependent relationships. How are people going to get along? This pandemic has shown the starkness of inequity and chaos in our world. None of us are at our best. However, I heard that pandemics are times of great transformation. This has been the right or most opportune time to use video conferencing as a regular way of connecting, not just for work and church, but also for fun. It's also been an opportune time to use digital technology to stay in contact with each other. The word for such a time is called kairos, derived from the Greek. With a heavy heart and some cynicism, however, I thought, this must be the anti-beloved community, similar to antebellum in the United States. During antebellum, there was no question about who could vote or who had rights, but we know better now. People have faithfully fought for the expansion of the right to vote through the John Lewis Act, but Congress didn't pass it. Many Unitarian Universalists and people of faith and humanists who value democratic principles put their shoulder to the boulder like Sisyphus, pushing that boulder up, 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 moving it towards where we can all be. In my own weariness, I have considered that it is also an even better time to reevaluate the relationship I have with myself. This reevaluation has arrived for me probably similarly to how it occurred to some people during this time. There has been death that has touched my life. There has been sickness or the fear of sickness. Questions about how people really are going to realize that we are interconnected. How are we going to live? What is it that keeps us from not only seeing that we are interdependent, but also living as we are interdependent? What choice can I make that is not just about me? Before the love story, there are some things to consider. I think it was Howard Thurman who said, don't consider what the world needs, but consider your gifts. What makes you come alive? What is it that makes you come alive? Do you know? Those gifts are your calling. During the kairos of this pandemic, have you considered your gifts? They may manifest through your spiritual practices, those practices that allow you to connect deeply to the self you want to be in the world. Before the love story, we need to know this self. I have been suffering. How about you? Even though I am in seminary using my gifts, I still have this feeling of uncertainty. Will all this suffering provide some kind of redemption? Am I sacrificing myself for a movement or cause that is my burden or cross to bear? These questions reflect some theological ideas that I have had to unpack. They are violent ideas, and I had to spend some time in solitude contemplating whether I truly believe that violence is redemptive. I mean, does anyone think that they should lash out at people for not wearing masks in public? Have you heard that you can't love anyone else without loving yourself first? Or maybe you've heard it in the negative. If you don't know why you could be loved, why would anybody else think so? Unitarian Universalists have principles that we do our best to adhere to. But do you know in your heart what you value, what you need, what affirms you? My grandmother used to say, whatever is done in the dark will come to the light. She may have been talking about secrets, but I'm talking about connecting to yourself through actions that allow you to answer these questions. I suppose you could figure this out by looking at your behavior and asking yourself if this is the self I want to be in the world. But I've seen people deceive themselves when they recount their behavior. We so want to be good. But what shaped that definition of good? What happened to us that shaped how we act in the world? Some of us have experienced rigidity in our early relationships. So as adults, we may overcorrect by being too porous in our relationships. Our early life development has an impact on how we act emotionally, just out of habit. This is the reason it is important to talk about how we covenant together. You got to be intentional and work to have right relationships with each other and bind ourselves to faith ancestors that we have as yet, some of them we have not met yet. It is the reason I call you into this uncomfortable work, your suffering. Denial and shame will keep you in habits of unintentional harm to yourself and the people in your community unless you acknowledge it. Before the love story, you really need to have compassion for yourself. I want to reference that quote that's on the outside of the order of service. Unless you acknowledge it, it's like a mother when the baby is crying. She picks up the baby and she holds the baby tenderly in her arms. Your pain and anxiety is your baby. You have to take care of it. You have to go back to yourself to recognize the suffering in you. Embrace the suffering and you get relief. By Thich Nhat Hanh. When I was a toddler, walking with my father, I fell down. My father said, get up, you're not hurt. So I got up. Though I pride myself in being able to get up after falling, I might have a tendency to push myself without asking for help. In seminary, many of my professors and co-learners have turned me toward self-compassion, and I am still learning to do this. When I connect to myself to challenge ideas, I do tell myself to get up. I was telling myself to get up this morning. But I'm learning that I can let people show up for me. And I think it's great the way our congregation has been showing up for our senior minister too. Letting people show up for you, it also requires being vulnerable with a trustworthy witness. This is something I urge you to think about as you contemplate theological and emotional ideas and how they have shaped your behavior. Sacrificing the self you want to be in the world in patterns of behavior that refrain from nurturing you may actually hinder the work you want to do in creating beloved community. You really must learn how to care for yourself. Practices like meditation, prayer, and reflection, yoga, they're critical. Tai Chi. And it is challenging and often feels wrong to set those boundaries that will define the self we want to be in the world. The self that has the gifts of insights, teaching, caring for people. These gifts are the things you probably do easily, but take for granted. But right now in this pandemic, maybe you have needed a little more attention or reflection on those gifts, just to be you, the self you want to be. It's hard to show up or be present for another when you cannot be present for yourself. So, be kind. Setting a boundary to stay disciplined is a kindness to yourself. Have humility. Consider that everything is not about you personally. And reflect on all the possibilities. Instead of ruminating that there can only be one thing, it's only this one thing, or this one person, or this one answer. This is the answer. When many are reduced to one, what is the one reduced? Lastly, perhaps you can let someone who has earned your trust be a witness to what will be your healing and transformation. All of this you can do when you know what yourself needs. How do we love our neighbor as ourselves when we have made little time for valuing our own self and the gifts of that self, or can acknowledge what they are? And we want to love our neighbor. Back to the story of me as a toddler and my father. As I continued walking with my father, he fell. So I told him, as only a 4-year-old can, get up, you not hurt. Much to my father's chagrin, he laughed at the irony of the situation. Before we can tell the love story, where groups of people can live together and treat each other with dignity dignity and respect, like their life matters. We have to do some work. Amen. Let's get to it. So be it.
For today's offering, we have collection baskets at the front of the aisle and by the welcome table in the lobby. And for those of you who are watching online, you can go to uutoledo.org, click on Give, and click on Online Giving, or you can mail a check to First Unitarian Church at 3205 Glendale Avenue, Toledo, Ohio, 43614. Coming soon. Next week's Spiritual Adventures Forum will be at 9:45 a.m. on Zoom about love poems. And next Sunday's service at 11 a.m. in the sanctuary and on YouTube, we have Darwin on Love. Speaking will be Reverend Dr. T.K. Barger. After today's service, we'll have social time, but no coffee or other refreshments as our kitchen leader, Carla Logan Mercer, is iced in at her home today.
So I have these closing words by Roddy Biggs. The pathway to healing. Friends, thank you for your witness to all that exists on the margins. Thank you for your commitment to hold yourselves and one another in great and steadfast love. Move forward from this space. Moving forward from this space, may we continue to nurture spiritual growth. May we continue to travel along the winding pathway to healing from whatever brokenness we individually and collectively hold, knowing that we do not journey this path alone. And now, sending the flame, growing out of our comfort. We extinguish this chalice today, but we are illuminated by a faith that allows us to sit and think. In this quiet time, we can reflect in solitude, meditating on love and growing out of our comfort. Though we experience discomfort, we are excited to give birth to a new, just world.
As we leave this friendly place, give life to every face. May the kindness which we learn guide our hearts till we return. Happy Sunday.